Hey guys, it's Bench175, and in my last video I got a request to talk about pistol malfunctions. So this is going to be a video on how to clear or fix the most common malfunctions you'll get or stoppages in a pistol or semi-automatic handgun. And by stoppages I mean some event that is physically stopping you from shooting. So I'll be showing what the stoppage looks like and then how I would go about fixing it. And this is from taking a lot of new shooters to the range and then just shooting thousands of rounds myself. And please, before watching this, if you're not familiar with handguns, I made a video called How to Use a Handgun or Semi-Automatic Pistol, and so I'll put a link to that video in the description. And this is kind of a lot of information, so I'll also put my video notes in the description too. Okay, so one of the most common types of stoppages I've seen at the range is when a shooter's ready to fire and they go and pull the trigger and they get a dead trigger or a hard wall on the trigger and the slide is fully forward. And what that looks like is the shooter will have loaded, drop the slide, they present, pull the trigger, but it's dead. Or it could be a hard wall where they're pulling and the trigger's not moving. And what actually happened is they forgot to take the safety off of the gun. Only after you remove the safety, of course, can the trigger be pulled and then you get your click and bang just like you should. Of course, this can only happen on a gun with a safety. So if you have a gun with a safety, you definitely have to train to remove it first before you try and fire. Another common stoppage I see at the range is when a shooter is ready to fire, they pull the trigger and they get a click instead of a bang. So that means no gunshot, but you do hear a click out of the gun. So we call that a failure to fire. And the immediate action to take to fix this is called tapping and racking. And so one of the most common reasons for this that I see is actually the shooter will be ready to shoot. So they insert the magazine and then they go present, pull the trigger, and they think that they had loaded the gun, but what actually happened is they forgot to rack the gun. So this will happen if they started with the slide all the way forward. So obviously that round never made it into the chamber because you have to rack. So again, tap, rack, and now you will have a round in the chamber that will go off when you pull the trigger. Another reason this happens is because the magazine was not fully inserted. So if you don't fully insert the magazine, when you drop the slide, it'll actually just go straight over the round and won't, because the round is not high enough for the slide to push the round into the chamber. So I didn't fully click in the magazine. I dropped the slide, but that round is actually still at the top of the magazine. Again, to fix this stoppage is the same thing. Tap, rack. Third reason this could happen is basically just having a bad round. What happens on a bad round is you'll click, and so the round did make it into the chamber, but something is wrong with the round and it doesn't go off. So like I said, the immediate action to fix a bad round is again tap and rack, get that bad round out of there so that you can move on to your next round. But if you're not in a emergency situation and you can wait, let's say you're at the range, what you should do then is remove your magazine and keep your pistol pointed downrange for at least 30 seconds, because what might actually be happening is the round might still go off because it's in a process called slow cooking, where it just is taking more time than normal. So hold it steady for 30 seconds, see if the round goes off, but then if it doesn't, you just rack your gun, get that bad round out of there, and then you can move on to shooting. And finally, another reason you might get a click instead of a bang or gunshot is that you were accidentally riding on the slide stop, which means you were pushing it down. And so even though you fired your last round, because you were pressing down on the slide stop, the slide went all the way forward on an empty chamber and empty magazine. So you thought you had ammo left, but then you just got a click. And that's because your chamber was empty, so nothing's in the gun. And again, if you do the tap and rack, well then at that point you would find out, I just ran out of ammo, so now you know what the problem is. So to summarize, if you get a trigger click instead of a bang or gunshot, then remember to tap and rack and then hopefully that will have cleared the stoppage and you can move on to your next round in the gun. Another common stoppage I've seen is getting a dead trigger. So that means you're pulling and no click, nothing's happening. But when you look at the slide, you notice that there's a case sticking out of the action. And so this is a failure to eject, also called the stovepipe, because the case might end up at the top here, kind of like a stovepipe. Or it might also be sticking out the right side of the action, so it depends. And actually the way to fix this is again to tap the bottom of the magazine rack, and then you'll get a new round into the chamber of the gun. One reason stovepipes can happen is because of limp wristing, which is when you're not holding the gun firmly enough, or you're holding it too far down and you're not letting the gun cycle correctly, so the case, instead of getting fully ejected, gets stuck in the action. Another reason might be that the gun is just too dirty. So I personally like to clean my guns around every 200 rounds, or the extractor is too dirty, or it just might be a more serious gun issue if it's happening constantly. If you get a dead trigger and you don't have a stovepipe and you made sure to take off the safety, or your gun doesn't have a safety, you might look down and notice that your action is slightly open, which means that your slide didn't go all the way forward, and so you might have a failure to go to battery or a failure to feed. So this might even be as little as 1/8 of an inch, or it might look like this, but for some reason your slide did not go all the way forward. And so my fix for this would again be to tap the magazine and rack the slide, and then hopefully that let your slide go all the way forward and your gun finish getting that round into the chamber. This might be caused by, if it's a gun that you've used before, the gun, if it's very dirty, it could cause a failure to go to battery. Or another thing is the limp wristing, like we talked about before. If it's a new gun, you might just be in the break-in period. Some guns need, I would call the first 200 rounds a break-in period, where you're giving the tight tolerances time to wear and everything to smooth out. Or your gun might actually have a preservative on it that's keeping it from working smoothly. So you're going to want to like wipe everything down and then put some lubricate it again. Or if you're using a new ammo, that could also be the cause, because the bullet shape might be catching inside the chambers. To give you an example of what I mean by bullet shapes causing failures to feed, my CZ P10F doesn't really like Federal HST hollow points, but I've tried 9 or 10 different types of ammo and those all fed 100% through my CZ. Hopefully you've noticed that the immediate action for all of the real stoppages we've seen so far are to tap and rack the slide, but this is one case where that actually won't work. And this is when you get a dead trigger and you look into the slide is like almost all the way backward. You look into the action and you see that there's a round in the chamber, and there's also a round right beside it that's trying to feed as well. So this is called a double feed, because obviously there's 2 rounds that are trying to feed into the chamber, which doesn't work. And then so yeah, if you tapped and racked, all you're doing is you're just jamming this case into the chamber more. So what you have to do in this case is lock the slide backward, strip the magazine, so of course push the magazine release, pull the magazine out. And so in this case, this round is bad, so you can either, it's not going to feed right, so you can either knock that out, or you can switch to another clean magazine or a full magazine. And then you're going to rack the gun twice, or until the case gets ejected. So now that my gun is clear, now since that case is out, I can actually feed a new round. So now I would insert a good mag and then rack the slide. Now I won't have a dead trigger anymore, and I can get a click and a bang like I want. Some possible causes of a double feed are again limp wristing, or it could be a faulty magazine that's not feeding correctly into your chamber. And so I would spend a little time, well, enough time practicing until you get good at clearing this type of stoppage, because it's not as easy as the other ones, which are just tapping and racking. This last type of stoppage is not very common, or at least it's never happened to me, but it's very important to know about. And that's when you pull the trigger and instead of getting your normal gunshot, you get a pop or a muted gunshot sound. Because what you might have in that case is called the squib load. And that's when the round that was chambered didn't have enough power to get the bullet all the way out of the barrel. So you might have even gotten case ejection, but there might still be a bullet inside of your barrel halfway through. So if you chambered a new round and you go to fire that one, the explosion has nowhere to go and it could potentially blow up your gun like right in front of you. So if you're suspicious that you might have a squib load because of a pop or a muted gunshot sound, you'll want to take the magazine out, lock the slide backward, inspect your chamber, and then you could either look for light, but ideally you'll have some kind of a pencil or a brass rod so that you don't scratch your rifling. And if you're able to get it all the way back and through, that means you didn't actually have a squib load. But if you stick it and it gets stuck halfway, you probably do have a bullet inside of your barrel at that point. And so to get that out would require you having to disassemble your gun, and you should look into how to clear a squib load in another video. But basically, you're getting a brass rod or some kind of rod, and you're hammering the bullet back outward out of your barrel, and then inspecting the barrel and the crown, making sure it's still in good shape. And then at that point, you could probably keep using your gun. If you guys have any questions, like usual, put it in the comments and I'll get back to you. And if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll talk to you guys next time.